Welcome, class, to U.S. History from 1865. My name is Alyssa Arnell, and I will be your faculty member through our very condensed but thorough review of U.S. history since the Civil War. This is our Moodle page, and you know that because if you found this recording, you're in this page. I want to go over the format for you and just a little orientation so that you can feel comfortable getting started. Excuse me. Our first content here gives you a description of the overall framework for this class. Our class is broken down into 13 dated segments called modules. The modules run Monday through Wednesday and then Thursday through Sunday. You have 2 modules each week. One thing that will be consistent through every module is that you have a discussion requirement. These discussions are based upon prompts that ask you to evaluate and consider the readings and viewings and interactives that have been assigned to you for the content for the class. We don't have a textbook. Instead, I've curated online content to create for you a more full and diverse perspective on history. So it's important that you go through all of the assigned content each module. And it's a lot. I understand it's a lot, but we are in a condensed class. So you should be looking to put in the time each week to get this done. The class layout here gives you the overview. The next thing we come to are the class announcements. When I send a class announcement out to you as an email, it'll be archived here. So if we go to class announcements, we see the first announcement that's been archived was the announcement that the class was open for your review. I attached the syllabus to that announcement and sent it out to you as an email last Monday. But also the syllabus can be found here under the link for syllabus and other documents. Sorry if it's a little bit loud. I'm actually recording this outside. Below the syllabus, you'll see additional documents. These are reference materials, and if you see something that says reference material, that means that it's not a required read. It's just information that might help you along the way with your assignments. And so it's a good idea to go through this information. I'll also attach here any rubrics or assignments for major projects like the research paper that's due for the class, and also for the final project, which is an online wiki museum exhibit. And don't get too worried about it. I'll go over the museum exhibit with you in the next module, and I think you're going to enjoy it. It shouldn't be a lot of work. I understand that this is a condensed class, so although I'm trying to keep the standards at the same that I would for, let's say, a spring or a fall term, I am relaxing some of the expectations for research and depth when it comes to the museum exhibit. So I think it'll be fun for you, and just relax. We'll get through all this together. Our first week here is an introduction and background, because after all, how can we start talking about U.S. history from 1865 if we have not reviewed the history to 1865? So you see an image. I'll always have an image here to kind of represent some of the ideas that are inherent or that are integral to the module. And then I'll give you an overview of the expectations for the week. I've given you here a brief video on U.S. history overview. It's from another academic who also provides online education that I think gives a different voice, so that you're having a diverse perspective in those who are instructing you as well. And then you also have here the first episode of Ken Burns' The Civil War documentary. Now, this is a link to our library database, and you're going to need your library card to be able to access this. If you look at the top of the page here under orientation, I say that you must have a library card. So make sure that you click on this link to order a library card if you don't already have one. If you don't have a library card, you can fill out this form and get signed up so that you can access our online resources. I want to mention here that on the library page, you'll see a chat box. And if you click on this chat box, you're going to be connected to a librarian who is available to you to answer any questions that you might have about the class content. And I'm just going to say, hello, this is Alyssa from history, and I am recording an overview for the summer 2 history class. I am just showing students how they may reach out to you for real-time communication. So we'll leave that up for a second. I bet we'll hear back from a librarian in just a moment. Bring that over here. Meanwhile, I will go back to this page and keep that up. There you go. See, GCC has already responded. We're here to help. Thanks for the quick reply. I am sure our students will be happy to know you are there for us. All right, so very quickly, the librarians replied there. So as you can see, that is easy to access. Meanwhile, going back to our content here, you'll need your library card, like I said, and then you can go in here and you can watch this video. It's about an hour, maybe 20 minutes, but it gives you an introduction to why the Civil War occurred. And this is really a current debate, right? Because we've been talking about, especially very recently with the Floyd protests and the Black Lives Matters movement, the idea that these Confederate flags and these Confederate statues represent a misrepresentation of history and also misguide us on how we should move forward. And we can have that conversation. We will have that conversation over the course of this term. The video is coming up here, so you can see that you can watch that. But for now, just know that you need to watch this video so that you can understand why the Civil War occurred. Because we start our class in 1865 when the Civil War ended and Reconstruction began. And we'll talk about Reconstruction in Module 2. But basically, the culmination of our earlier U.S. history comes to this moment of strife in our country between free states and slave states. And in U.S. government, in Congress, you had pretty much a balance between the northern free states and the southern slave states up until this moment. And when Abraham Lincoln is elected, he's elected on a platform where he says that he will not address slavery where it exists, but he's not going to allow slavery to expand as the country begins to expand west. And so that's going to put the southern states on notice, because they realize that if they have an equal balance of voice in Congress, but if new states come in and those are free states, then they're not going to have an equal voice in Congress anymore. And so they secede from the Union in an effort to maintain their interests as slave-holding states. And so that dichotomy will lead us into Reconstruction, into a new relationship between the federal government that will be largely the radical Republicans, and that is not the Republicans of today. I know that Republican Party likes to talk about their connection to Abraham Lincoln, but in fact, that is not true. Hold on one second here. Okay, I am back. Sorry, I had to take a pause there because there was a lot of background noise. But the radical Republicans were interested in expanding civil rights and protecting the rights of African Americans who have become newly freed. And so there was a struggle that occurs with the southern states who have been devastated by the war, whose homeland had been devastated by the war, and now were attempting to navigate a new understanding of what it meant to be in the Union as they resist expanding protections for people of color. But that's for the next module. We need to understand how we got there. And so you have a digital history page here I want you to look at as well. This digital history page is actually a lesson plan for academics, for teachers. I want you to read the content here because it gives an overview of what was happening at this period of time. There are also in this document some suggested student exercises. You do not have to engage with those exercises. I just want you to read the content. Finally, we have the Lies My Teacher Told Me, Chapter 1. This is a article or chapter that I give to all of my students to read in all of my classes in the first week or module because it introduces you to the idea of heroification. Heroification is the process of taking a historical figure and making them into a idealized image of American history. So it's about just highlighting the best of someone or highlighting the narrative of that person's life that feeds into this idea of US elitism, right? And we're a complex people. And so heroifying our historical figures gives us a misconstrued understanding of the past, but it also creates historical figures that are unattainable. They lose their fallacy, they lose their complexity, and it becomes hard for us to really engage and understand them as people. And if we can't engage and understand the past as it was, then we can't really apply that in a meaningful and realistic way to our present and our future. So for this week, or for this module, I'm sorry, I keep saying that, please review this information and then prepare to answer the Module 1 discussion. Now, for the discussions, you must have 2 responses. And I ask that you post on 2 different occasions during the module. It's going to be tough this first module because people are coming in a little bit late, or you're just getting used to the format. So I understand that most of you will probably be posting just on one day, probably on Wednesday, and that's fine for the first week or first module. But make sure that moving forward, you're posting on at least 2 separate occasions so that we're actually engaging in a discussion. But your first response needs to directly answer the prompt given. Here, I'm asking you to think about the article Lies My Teacher Told Me about heroification, and then reflect on the other assigned viewings and readings, and consider whether or not those resources, the other resources that I've given you, heroify our historical figures. So what we're doing at the college level when we engage in history, we're doing more than just reviewing historical moments and regurgitating information on a multiple choice test, right? The study of history at this level is also about how we think about the past, thinking about the way that we think. It's critical thinking skill sets that you're learning here. And so what I'm asking you to do is not just think about the history, but think about how we've been taught our history. Because when we are able to think for ourselves and we're able to access real, reliable information, we can then make determinations for ourselves about what has happened and what it means. We're no longer left to let someone else tell us. We can figure it out ourselves. And that really is why I have here for you in this image for Module 1, the Declaration of Secession from Mississippi. Because if you look here, it says, in the momentous step which our state has taken in dissolving its connection with the government of which we so long formed a part, It is but just that we should declare the prominent reasons which have induced our course. Our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest of the world. So you probably have heard in the past that the Civil War and the Southern states were fighting for states' rights. But here, in a primary source, a document from the time that Mississippi seceded from the country, and secession means trying to leave, right? When the Southern states began to leave the Union, they created formal documents that explained their reasons for leaving. And right here in the second paragraph, Mississippi says, we are leaving because our interests as a state are identified with the institution of slavery, and we see it as the greatest material interest of the world. When you go to primary sources and you use critical thinking and you understand the context of what is happening, context meaning you understand the landscape in which history is occurring, then you're better able to understand what really happened. So when someone says that secession and the states leaving the Union were just about states' rights, it was about the states' right to own slaves. And when we ignore or take out that second part, it removes the overall important point that this war was fought about slavery. And if we take that out, then we can recreate the history later on, which happens around the turn of the 20th century, to be about this heroified history of saving a Southern culture. And so that's why it's important to evaluate the resources that you're given, that you've been given, that have been the framework for how you've understood history so far. And I ask you in this class to put on a critical lens, and I'll talk more about what that means in Module 2, but I'm asking you to think about the way you think about history. Think about why it is you think about history the way you think about history, right? What have you been taught? Who taught you this? What culture? What are the lenses that you see the world through? We all have our own perspectives, and it's important and healthy that as we grow up, we identify ourselves by the ways in which we see the world. I'm a woman of color, a Southerner, a historian. All of that colors the way I look at the world. And your identities, whether it be about you being a mother or a daughter or a son, maybe you're a trans student, maybe you are a non-traditional student, whatever that means. Maybe you are a hiker or you love football, whatever it is that makes up your identity. You see the world through those lenses, and critical thinking asks you to think about how those lenses impact your ability to navigate reliable evidence and see it from an objective perspective. And so consider what you've been taught, question what you've been taught, question what I tell you, question the resources that I give you, question everything, but respectfully, from a non-emotional place, but from a place of clear and rational thinking. And that's a skill set that, you know, we have to work on throughout our lives. So you have the week 1 discussion. Your initial response should be about 300 words at least. And then you need to go back in and you need to respond to your fellow classmates. You can earn up to 30 points per discussion, and you must post at least twice. You can earn up to 20 points for your initial response and up to 10 points for each additional response you make, totaling 30. So if you respond twice and you get 15 points for the first initial response and you get 5 points for the second, that's 20 out of 30. But if you respond 5 times and you have substantive quality responses, then you might, you know, actually be able to earn 50, but you're going to at least know you'll earn that 30. So do the minimum, but I would encourage you to do more. The last thing for our first week is the timeline assignment. And this timeline assignment is not meant to be something stressful, right? I'm just asking you, if we look in the assignment itself, I'm asking you to create a brief timeline of 7 to 10 memorable events from this last year. And I bet you can think of a few. And I want you just to identify those 7 to 10 memorable events, just give a brief description and copy in rather, a link to a reliable resource for each one of these events. Utilize MLA referencing formatting for each event, and then provide one paragraph after you've identified your 7 to 10 events, one paragraph for the entire paper that explains why you chose the events you chose. Now, sometimes students think that you have to put a paragraph for each event. No, you only need one paragraph that explains your reasoning, right, for why you chose the events you chose. I've given you a short template and then a week 1 timeline rubric. So don't overthink this. I want to see what kind of events you choose and why you chose them. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to discuss this next module and think about why we choose the events we choose, right? Think about how our choices reflect our perspectives. And that's it. So I know I say that's it. I know it's a lot, but it is a condensed course. I'm here for you. My contact information is in the syllabus. You have my phone number, that's my cell phone. You can text me at any time. If you text me, please just tell me who you are and what class you're in so I know where I'm going with the questions you're asking. So again, read, watch, reflect, answer the Module 1 discussion, complete the timeline assignment, all of this by Wednesday. So you've got a lot to do. And again, I'm here if you need me. And beyond that, in Module 2, once we've gotten a little bit more familiar with the format and we've engaged some, I'll go over with you the research paper and the final project as well. And then you'll see in the expectations for Module 2, you'll also want to be signing up to talk to me about your research paper. So we will have a one-on-one, either Zoom or phone call meeting sometime in the next week so that you have proper orientation and you're ready to go. So do not fret, my students. I am here for you. I'm going to support you through this. We will get through this together. Stay positive and have a great day.